So now I'm going to show you some basics in Substance Painter. So how do you start a new project? You need to have few files ready. This one you need to have AO, Edge and normal maps and the FBX model. Also you can have some decals, but we are gonna cover it later. Now you're just gonna open Substance Painter. It's gonna look like this, nothing in here. Click on File, New, and here you have to select the model you want to use. Let's choose the Chiha long gun because it is pretty easy model to work with. Now I'm gonna set it to 2K. This is not gonna affect the export resolution. This is just to make it look better here when you're gonna paint it. Yeah. Now we have the model, but it is too flat. No, not interesting. So we're firstly gonna name the Lamberts. This is gun. And here we have hull. Now the part with maps comes in. We are just gonna select all these maps and drag and drop them into SP. Make all of them texture and import either into current session or the project. The current session means when you're gonna close the Substance Painter, it is gonna disappear and you're gonna have to import it again. For the project, it will just leave. It will be only in this project. It won't show anywhere else. Only when you open this exact project and shelf, it will just be left there. It will show every time you open it on every project. So I'm gonna choose project, hit import, and now we can start placing maps into their respective buttons, folders, whatever is it called. So I'm just gonna enlarge it to make it easier. Now we have the AO map. We're gonna drag and slap it into ambient occlusions map here. Here is the edge map. We place it into curvature map here and normal into normal map. Now when I'm gonna switch the gun, you can already see that it's a bit rougher, has all those scratches, the imperfections, and we gotta do the same thing for the gun. AO into ambient occlusions, edge into curvature, and normal into normal. Now it is already also on the gun. Small little imperfections. And for the controls, if you want to turn the camera, you have to hold left alt and hold left mouse button. If you want to move the camera, you have to hold the left alt and middle mouse button. If you want to zoom, you can either use alt and right mouse button, or you can just use the scroll wheel. That is pretty much all controls you're gonna use now. Also we have some Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and if you hit Ctrl D, it will duplicate. Also there is a little window that every time pops up if you hold Ctrl or Alt with every controls. So now we have these three ready. Let's start with baking world space normals and position map. you do this here. Here the button Bake Mesh Maps. You click on it, select only position and workspace normal, set it to, I don't know, maybe 1K, 2K, whatever you want, and click Bake Selected Textures. If you want to bake those textures only for gun or only for turret, you hit Bake Gun, Bake Turret or whatever, but we are gonna have to do it for every part. So with this it's gonna do it for all. So just hit the Bake Selected. It's gonna be flashing for a moment and click OK. Now we have those two maps here on the gun and also on the hull. Now we can start with placing the LNC tank camo smart material. It is a nice little thing made by Liechtenstein. It is making it much easier. You can download it on Discord. Just take it and slap it in here. You also can, if you don't have it, you have to import it. Just download the smart material from resources. It's gonna be there somewhere, and drag and drop it like with the maps. Just import it and import it as smart material. It has to be smart material. I'm gonna hide the gun for a moment. As you can see, all the weathering has been applied, all those scratches, dust and all. Here you have everything in their folders: dust, scratches, dirt. You can turn them on, off. If you want to make a newer looking skin, you can turn everything off, or you can leave everything on if you want to make something destroyed. I'm just gonna turn some of them off. I like to have all the scratches, or at least half of them, using the rusted and exposed metal. So let's just leave it there. Everyone can adjust it how they want. And here is the color of the camo. Now here you have the roughness. If you adjust it to the max, it's gonna be really matte, and on the black it's gonna be glossy as fuck. I would recommend to set it somewhere 0.7, 0.8. It's looking best here, or maybe the 0.8 will be a bit better. And if you want to change the color, you can change it here. You have to click on base color here, click on this, click on dynamic, and choose whatever color you want. I'm gonna leave it here as the green one, and let's move to another. Weathering is done. Now we have the brushes and erasers. For pattern, you can use either white and black mask. For another color, let's say I'm gonna make this brown and add the black mask, and I can paint on it, or I can use this little guy, the paint layer, and paint directly onto the layer, not into the mask. But it is better to use the mask. You can adjust it afterwards. With this you can't. You just have the color and you can do nothing with it. Here you can see there's some brush adjustments, some size, some flow. It's better to look into it. Also we have spacing. Mostly if you're drawing patterns like, let's say, these kinds of, just slap some lines on top of it, it is better to use as little spacing as possible. It's gonna look more uniform, it's not gonna have as much space between the dots. Let me just erase it. But some brushes are better used with large spacing. Let's find some. Also we have these brushes here. You have different kinds, all of them have different strokes. It is better to look into it and experiment with it to understand it better. Let me find some with large spacing. Yeah, here you can see spacing 92 for the splatter. If I would have used the spacing 5, it would be garbage. Let's say it like that. So also the erasers, you can use also the brushes as erasers, so you can erase some patterns, for fuck's sake. You can erase in the style of the brush, as you can see here. Now we can move on onto the black and white masks. Here you can see this layer is completely brown, but we have applied a black mask to it, so nothing will show up. If you're a bit familiar with 2D skinning, you know that alpha just makes it disappear, let's say, or make or show the original texture in the water underskins. Here it is almost the same, it's just not gonna show up if it is black, it's gonna show up only if it is white. You have to use the brush, or you can use the polygon fill, but on that a bit later on. Use a brush and start painting. As you can see, the brown starts applying and we have some white bits on the black mask. You can also adjust the grayscale of the brush to make it disappear. Just paint in black and it's not gonna show up anymore. As you can see, it is again completely black. If you want to completely clear the mask, you can use clear mask, or just click on add black mask. It's gonna also make it disappear. Now if you want to erase something and from the brown color, you're gonna have to use the white mask and use black grayscale on the brush. It works just like before, just invert it. I think you're gonna understand it. As we have the black mask also done, we can move on to polygon fill. This is best used also with black. No, this is mostly used with black mask or white mask. Let's say I want to make wheels brown. I'm gonna choose the polygon fill and choose mesh fill. It's gonna take the whole object, let's say a wheel, and paint it with the color. Paint it white on the mask, and it's gonna apply the color after it. But if we want to maybe paint only some part, let's say this triangle, we can use the triangle or the square fill, no, polygon fill, or we can use UV chunk. Usually it takes like a face from something. Here it takes the whole mudguard. Here it takes only the face of the armor. It is usually best used for wheels if you want to make the wheels coated in rubber. You just choose the polygon fill. You just choose the UV chunk fill and do the same process, but not with brown color, but with rubber material. Sometimes the wheels are a bit fucked up, let's say, so we're gonna have to paint it one by one. One square by one square triangle. As we are on the rubber material, we can already move on to the different material parts. As I started with the rubber, I'm gonna make the wheels with rubber. So just search for some rubber material or smart material. I'm gonna choose rubber tire because it is one of the best to use for it. Slap it into parts. We're gonna move it afterwards to not have all these scratches, because I've never seen rubber with metal scratches. I'm gonna apply black mask. I'm gonna choose UV chunk fill and just color it with rubber. Now we have rubbery wheels. You have many kinds of different materials used, mostly. Here I could use some metal material, sometimes plastic, rubber, fabric, so you can really play with it if you want to. Now, as we have the rubber tire here, and the rubber doesn't have metallic scratches, we can nicely move on to layer placement. It's pretty crucial because, as just like in Photoshop, the top layer, let's say, overrides the bottom layer, so it's not gonna show up. So if we don't want metallic scratches or rust on rubber, fabric or something like that doesn't have it, we can just take it and move it above the scratches folder. Here, now you can see that it doesn't have any of those metallic scratches. Those metallic scratches are only on the parts that are below it. Only on anything you place below it is going to be affected by it. And one of the last things we have is decals and alphas for decals. Here I have prepared 2 decals, also with their respective alphas. Keep in mind that anything you import into Substance, like textures, decals, whatever, has to be in 1:1 format. So let's say I'm gonna make this decal, this 12. I'm gonna try to find the original BSD file. So 1 minute. Here I have the original BSD file. I'm just gonna open it to show the resolution of it. and how to make the alphas. I'm gonna make the 12. Here you can see I have the 12, and the resolution is 1:1. It always has to be, or it's gonna be stretched out or squished or whatever. It's just gonna be fucked up. As we have the decal, we have to save it with transparent background as PNG. As PNG, just save it. Decal, yes, okay. We also have to make the alpha for it. No, it is not required, but it is better to make alpha for it. So I'm just gonna copy this layer, hide this layer, and make the color of the text white. And turn on black background. Now it's gonna show up only the 12, nothing next to it, nothing around it, just the parts that are white. So now we're gonna save it also as PNG and name it something decal 1 alpha or whatever. Save it, close it, yes. We have these, so let me just import it quickly. When you're importing decal, it is better to make alphas named different than the texture, because you're not gonna see what you are importing, and you have to make the decal, the texture, you have to set it as texture, and the alpha as alpha. So let's just import it into project, import, and now we have the decals. Decals are best used as brushes. You can use custom alphas for brushes. So I could just paint the pattern with the 12, but I'm not gonna do it. So let's just add paint layer, slap it into decals, choose brush, and we can turn off all of these besides the color. You can also make it a bit higher, the decal, because you have the alpha, but that is now pretty worthless. When you're placing the decals, it is crucial that you place them on the right spot. So the texture, just the decal, you have to place on the base color here, place it in there, and you have to hear the alpha, just close it, and take the alpha of the decal and place it onto alpha. Now all these parameters should be on 0, spacing minimal, angle 0, and turn off flow. Also make sure to not turn off stroke opacity, because it's gonna be invisible. And we can start painting the decal. I'm just gonna slap it in here. Boom. Yeah, as you can see, it's gonna show up on the other side, but that can be resolved with using black mask. Just use the black mask on it and choose UV chunk fill, turn it to white, and click on the place where the decal is, and it's gonna show up only this side and not the garbage projected behind it. Now we can move on to rendering, camera and lighting. You can use different light sources here in, where the fuck was it? In display settings here. Usually it is set on panorama, but you have many different choices in here. Tons of lighting options. I like to use Studio 03. It's looking just better. You can also adjust the exposure, environment opacity, and the environment opacity is usually used for something like this. When you have the environment behind it, but that is usually pretty worthless. Field of view. And some post effects, anti-aliasing, and just about many other crap to adjust. Usually it is pretty worthless. If you want to render the skin, let me just slap also the material on the gun. So if you want to render, you click on this camera, just rendering, and here you can turn off ground, you can make it a bit longer if you want to, adjust the lighting. Oh yeah, also if you want to move the lighting source, you hold shift and right mouse button and just move it. Now I'm gonna just make it 10 seconds, do not wait for long. I'm gonna save the render, desktop, name it and done. As you can see, it is rendered in PNG with everything transparent around it. It is usually pretty useful to have this, maybe for some photos for War Thunder Live or anything like that, or just a full around. Now we have only the last thing remaining, and that is the final export. If you want to export, you click on File, Export Textures here. After it's gonna save, Export Textures, and we are now gonna focus on the settings. File type PSD for Photoshop. Output template has to be PBR metallic roughness. It just has to be. Size, you can use whatever size you want. If you want to use 8K, use 8K. If you want to use 1K, use 1K, but the best is used 4K or 8K. Sometimes 2K for some textures, but I'm gonna use 4K. And for padding you can use different ones. If the model has like rack, some cloth around the gun barrel, it is best used no padding, pass-through, because on the models you can't see the rack or the cloth. It just isn't there. This is just gonna help a little bit with it. Usually it is best to use transparent or the diffusion, but I usually use pass-through. When you choose transparent, you should adjust the dilation to 5 pixels, and this is all done. Now we're just gonna choose the output directory where it's gonna export. Let's choose it here, save settings, save the whole PSD file, save it into the same folder. Save. As we have everything saved, it's better to save, sometimes it crashes. We hit export textures again and start exporting. It is gonna take a moment. Maybe a bit longer moment. Come on. Yeah, finally done. So we can close this window, close this, of course save it, and open our folder. You can see we have both of those textures for gun and for hull, and we can finally start the final assembly, which is not going to be shown here, maybe a bit later. And that is all for the basics in Substance Painter. There are also some advanced stuff like generators, filters and everything else, or levels, but that is for next part. Without basics you can't use the advanced stuff. So that is all.